Hey, Connection Groups, it's Tyler here. I just want to say thank you for just doing all that you're doing right now in the midst of COVID and just the fall and heading towards Christmas, whatever else. I know that some of our groups have been taking a little bit longer to get going, and some of it's because of sickness, some of it's because of just a million different things that are going on. But I just want to say today, thank you for doing all that you're doing. We desperately need community during this time to stay afloat. So thank you for doing all that you're doing. I just wanted to address today one topic that I just think is really important, one that's near and dear to my heart as an education major, as a teacher, as you can imagine, and one that I know that you run into every single time you have a group, and that is wait time. I know that when everyone asks a question, when whoever's leading asks a question, sometimes it feels like nobody answers. So we're going to talk about wait time today, and I'm going to give you just a little bit of teaching into that, but also give you some practical ideas and principles as to what you can do to help ask great questions, and what happens when nobody answers your question, and how to prompt additional questioning to get the most out of your small group. So stick with me here. We're going to go through a few principles, and I think it's really going to help you out. Thanks for watching. So when you're leading a small group, sometimes it does feel a little bit like the econ teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where you ask the question, you pose this question that you want kids to respond to, or you want to get them engaged, and they just don't respond. It's silence, right? And it gets to be really uncomfortable. And so for me as a small group leader, but also for me as a teacher, this is near and dear to my heart, this idea of getting people involved, but also having to wait to get them involved. So they've done studies on this, and the average wait time that a teacher gives their students before they answer their own question, or before they rephrase it, or before whatever they move on, I guess, is 0.9 seconds. So we're asking people in our small groups to think about the question, to think about what their response may be, to formulate their response, and then to actually muster up enough courage to respond without feeling like they're sounding dumb or whatever else it may be for them in 0.9 seconds. It's impossible. And I know that happens in schools, but it also happens in our small groups. We have the desire as leaders who are leading discussion to get everyone involved. We want everyone to grow. And so we pose these questions, but we don't give enough time to wait because we're uncomfortable with it. And so I'm going to give you some really practical, really good ideas that I think are good from a teaching perspective, but also from leading a small group perspective. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first, and I think one of the most important principles about this is that for you as a facilitator, for you as a group discussion leader, you have to recognize and you have to view it as a pinball machine. So if you've played pinball before, you know how this goes. There's a ball that just gets shot up, and then you have to try to hit it with the flipper to try to get as many points as possible. And so if you transfer that into a small group setting, winning for our small groups is getting as many people involved, getting as many people thinking, getting as many people talking as possible, because we want to help them grow closer to Christ. And they can only do that. And I believe one of the biggest principles that I learned in education school is that whoever is doing the talking is the one doing the learning. And so I'm sure you've all been in classrooms where the teacher is just talking and talking and talking, and it's so easy for you to just zone out. But I'm sure you've also maybe experienced classrooms where the person who, or maybe in a work meeting or whatever else, the person who's leading or facilitating is doing a really good job of bouncing back and forth between different people, different ideas, different discussion techniques, whatever it may be, and you're really engaged. So that's what our first role is as a leader, is to view it that way. You don't get points for talking the entire time. You don't get points for being the smartest person in the room. You get points for trying to facilitate and bounce that pinball back and forth between different people as much as possible. So just think about that when you're leading a small group. All right, tip number 2, you have to be okay with silence. And this might be really hard for most of you, because again, when you ask that question, when you pose that question, you really want to get them somewhere, right? You usually have an intent in mind. And so as the person who's leading, you have to be okay with silence. Usually when you ask the question and you wait, it feels like eternity, but it's really only like 3 to 4 seconds. So the key here is to wait at least 5 to 15 seconds before you start doing something else. So this second tip here, just be okay with silence. It's okay, guys. Okay, so the final tip here is after you give that wait time, that 5 to 15 seconds of wait time, then and no one still responds, then go ahead and try to rephrase the question or ask a clarifying question. So I'll give you an example here. So if the first question you're trying to ask is, what things did people expect from the Messiah? And you wait 5 to 15 seconds, you give good time, you see that people are maybe thinking, but they're just not responding. At that point, then maybe ask a question, well, what is a Messiah, or what is the Messiah? And then you might get some response from that. Or then you ask maybe, what were the people expecting? What was the situation that the people were in at the time? And then you just try to get to that same answer by asking more direct questions that people maybe find an easier answer to. And so if maybe you're asking these questions that you're clarifying, you still just don't feel like you're getting anywhere, something that I like to use is something called think, pair, share. So if you're asking a question and again, nobody responds, people just seem confused, or maybe you just can tell that they just don't want to share it. So maybe just ask them, hey, maybe think about it for a couple seconds, and then maybe talk to the people around you for a second. Just see if you can come up with any ideas or brainstorm any ideas. And then finally, after you give them maybe a minute to talk to the people around them, then you ask, hey, what did you two think? Or what were you guys thinking? Or what did you talk about during that time? That just allows people to kind of get some of those uncomfortable feelings out, because a lot of times people know the answer. They probably know the answer, but they just don't have the courage to speak it because they don't want to be wrong. And especially when it comes to, talking about the Bible, people really do not want to sound dumb, or they don't want to be wrong in that situation. So those are just some really good ways to do it. Make sure you give that 5 to 15 seconds up front. Make sure you then ask some clarifying questions or ask some more direct questions. And if that doesn't work, then maybe do that think, pair, share, where they talk with a neighbor, or they talk with the people around them first. So overall, these are just some short tips that are going to help you out. If you have more questions surrounding this, I'd love to have a personal conversation with you. But thank you for watching, and I really hope this helps you lead your group well and help your people learn a little bit more and grow towards Christ together.